So as I'm sure most of you have seen by now, there was an article that came out from Bleacher Report regarding Zach Lavine and potentially not seeking a max contract next offseason when he becomes a free agent. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking me about this, and I wanted to briefly share my thoughts on the matter as this continues to be a trending topic, which I don't think is valid, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So guys, I'm sure most of you know this by now, but in the sports industry, there are varying degrees of credibility when it comes to reporting. Some organizations or individuals actually have legitimate sources and are ethical reporters, and then you have some that come up with the most outlandish topics just to get clicks and generate ad revenue. There are some reports or reporters and writers that I have a great deal of respect for, such as Casey Johnson, the Bulls beat writer, or Rob Schaefer, or Adrian Rosganowski, or Shams Charania on the national scene. Then there are other guys like Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, who I'm always amazed that they even have a job in this industry. Well, Bleacher Report is also one of these platforms where whenever I see something reported from them, I always take it with a bit of a grain of salt. Not saying all of their reporting is trash or false information, but more often than not, they're one of the organizations that is focused on clickbaity titles, which, by the way, I had a lot of folks claiming that my last video was clickbait, and I got some flack for it. It was my last Hot Takes video in which it was titled Whether the Bulls Have a Realistic Option of Trading for LaMelo Ball. Well, sure, probably a bit clickbaity, and I'll try to refrain from doing so moving forward. But that was a take from one of my viewers. It was not mine, and it was one of the takes that I just addressed in the video. So I know some of you didn't like that since I try to stay away from clickbait headlines. However, if you're ever running a YouTube channel, sometimes that's just the way it works if you ever want to obtain viewers. But noted, I'll avoid doing that going further. Just know that when it's one of my hot takes videos, these are takes from my viewers, not mine, as I did have some people, comment without actually watching the video, come in and criticize, not knowing that this wasn't in fact my take. But anyway, I digress. Bleacher Report is one of those media platforms that I don't necessarily have a ton of respect for, because over the years, most of their news, rumors, and predictions have generally turned out to be untrue. However, this one was a little bit different because the original source of the topic actually came from Joe Crowley of the Chicago Sun-Times, which I have a little more respect for the Chicago Sun-Times, not necessarily Joe Crowley, but the Sun-Times can come out with decent information here and there on the Bulls. The other thing you have to understand about this topic and what was addressed in the article, if you want to even call it an article, the whole thing was about 4 paragraphs long, which boggles my mind, but more on that in a second. But what you have to understand is that they're saying Zach Lavine may not seek the max and give the Bulls a discount on his services. Nowhere does it mention that is a for sure thing, nor does it make any mention of direct quotes from Zach specifically, or that it was actually coming from someone in Zach's camp. None of that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. This is complete speculation. On top of that, the article also mentions that Zach may consider a discount if the Bulls add key role players around him. Well, I mean, that's kind of obvious. If the Bulls actually do bring in some nice complementary pieces, or even another star to where it would force him to take a discount to keep the team together next offseason, then yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. Now, for me, I don't see Zach Lavine taking a discount at all. For all intents and purposes, he's being played on a discounted contract right now, and for the past 2 or 3 seasons with the level of production that he's been given compared to his salary, he's going to want to get paid. Now, whether you feel he deserves a max contract or not, I'm not here to debate that right now. But Lavine, now being an all-star, having one of the best seasons of his career, he's likely going to want a max contract. Now, let's say for a moment, though, that this report in fact is true, and Lavine would be willing to consider taking a discount so the Bulls can build more pieces around him to help the team win. Then that's pretty huge if you're the Bulls front office, because it will give you so much more flexibility going into next offseason, and really even this offseason too, because the Bulls have to plan their free agency options for this year with in mind that they're going to need to pay Zach Lavine going into the following season. This enables you to potentially bring in guys for longer term deals, knowing that Lavine is willing to take a pay cut, or I guess I should say a pay cut because he's going to get paid more than what he's currently making, but more so a pay cut from a max contract. And not only does it provide more cap flexibility to the Bulls, which is great, but if this report is in fact true, it means that Lavine is absolutely committed to the Bulls for the long term. It doesn't keep that lingering elephant in the room that will be sure to happen all season on whether Lavine may leave the Bulls after his contract expires, or, the back and forth, should you trade Lavine if he's showing any intention on not re-signing for the Bulls before you just let him walk for nothing. If he communicates to the Bulls front office, hey, you get me some good pieces around me, which I believe they kind of already have, and he says, if you do that, I'd be willing to take less than the max because I care about winning and the success of the team than me making more money. If that actually ends up being the case, or is the case for that matter, if this report is true, I would have mad respect for Lavine, because this isn't like a LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh scenario, or the Warriors, what they did in their dynasty and making sacrifices so they could keep the team together and making the salaries work. This is a Bulls team that isn't even a playoff team and not really close to contention for that matter. And if he's actually willing to take a pay cut for the betterment of the team, then I would have newfound respect for Lavine, and it would show that he is all about winning, which I already think that is the case with Lavine. I do think that he cares a lot about actually producing quality team success and showing that he can win at a high level. But even for guys who in the league actually care about winning, they still want to get their max money. But again, that's if these reports are in fact true, which I really don't think there's an ounce of truth to them. More so just speculation from some reporters who are stating things without any factual basis for it, or direct sources or quotes from Lavine himself that he would consider this, right? In my opinion, Lavine is going to want to get paid, plain and simple. He's going to want to get paid the max because whether you think he deserves it or not, which again is a topic for a different day, the fact of the matter is, based on some of the max contracts that players have received in this league who are lesser players than Lavine, he is going to expect to get the same level of star treatment. I mean, come on, Andrew Wiggins is on a max contract, for crying out loud. And that isn't to say it's bad for Lavine to seek the max and that, he really should be taking less. No, players don't do that. It's incredibly rare. Players are going to want to get their max money, or at least the max that they absolutely can, even if they feel their value isn't necessarily worth the contract they're being offered. See Cristiano Felicio, which is why Zach Lavine ends up actually taking, if he ends up taking less, to give the Bulls more cap flexibility. I would sing his praises like no other, because that takes a lot for a player to do so in the NBA. Because part of the NBA, the players and how they are compensated, it is an ego thing in terms of who is making more money than who is on a bad contract, who's on a good contract, because everyone knows their salaries. It's not like your typical job where you don't know much about your coworkers and how much they're getting paid, generally anyway, and it's often taboo to talk about. So for NBA players, most of them really young, they want to show that they're making the big bucks compared to their counterparts. And it takes a true competitor, in my mind, to forgo that and say, I'll put the team first, the franchise first, over my own financial standing or status. Anyway, I just wanted to briefly share my thoughts on this topic, as I know a lot of Bulls fans and general NBA fans have been talking about this and wondering what it means, and I just feel like some of these sports media outlets need to be held accountable for the obvious clickbaiting they do to stir up a lot of these rumors that rarely have any truth to them whatsoever, especially when the articles are barely longer than a tweet with no effort in creating quality and meaningful content, just all about how much revenue they can bring in. Anyway, that's probably a little off topic. Guys, don't forget the Wizards face the Cavs tonight, and the reason I bring that up is because if the Wizards win, well, then the Bulls have officially been eliminated from playoff contention, and if the Wizards lose, well, the Bulls will survive for yet another day before they take on the Nets tomorrow. So stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy daily Bulls content. Thanks again as always, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.